Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson, and I'm so glad that everybody is here to join us today. I have a special guest. I'm doing a series right now on the survivor stories. People want to hear from others who have gone through this nightmare, and now they're on the other side, kind of realizing there is life after narcissism. And yes, there is life after narcissism. And so I have a guest today. Her name is Wendy. And Wendy, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So Wendy has lived this nightmare. She can relate to what's going on out here. So Wendy, I'm going to give you the floor and just kind of let you maybe tell a little snapshot of your story.
Okay. I was married for a little over 31 years. During 31 years, my husband left me 3 separate times because of having affairs. The first time was 4 years after we were married, and we were separated at that time for 3 years. And we got back together, and I ended up getting pregnant. And then again, when our son was 6, he left. Another affair, a different girl. And we were separated for a little over a year at that point. I worked very hard that time for the marriage because I did not want my son growing up in a split home. And I didn't know that I was dealing with covert narcissism at that point. I had no idea. We got back together, but over the years, so he left again the last time in 2022. And I just hired a lawyer because at that point my son was 19 and there was no issues with him, having to go from house to house or anything like that.
Sure.
Yeah. But I had a friend mention the word narcissist to me a couple of times, and I looked it up and I'm like, no, that doesn't fit. I didn't deal with that. And then my uncle sent me a radio program of a counselor in Florida a psychologist who specifically deals with survivors of narcissistic relationships. And I'm like, no, that's not it. But somewhere along the line, I came across the term covert narcissism. And I started reading about that. And I was like, oh my goodness, this explains the past 30 years of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I have seen a counselor on and off ever since the first time he left me. And I took this information about covert narcissism to her, and she'd been in practice for 45 years, maybe. And she'd never heard of it before. And it was like eye-opening to her. And she started passing it around her office to her other, counselors and life coaches in her office. And none of them have ever heard the term covert narcissism.
Wow. And sadly, that's not unusual. I hear that from a lot of people that Dr. Ramani actually just recently, I watched one of her videos that actually explains this a little bit, because in the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, they do identify narcissism and they list all these traits of overt narcissism or grandiose narcissism, but they don't identify the covert side of this. And so then therapists who are training and studying, they don't get any education on this piece that's the covert side of this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But all of the things that you would read about covert narcissism I dealt with. The big one, I would say for me, something that was especially hurtful was the withholding of emotional and physical affection.
Okay.
That was, years would go by when we would have no physical intimacy.
Okay.
When he
was he using it
4 years.
Was he using it as a weapon to get you in line or to control your behavior?
No, I think he just no, he wasn't controlling me with that, other than it was just hurtful to me. I think, one thing that I did find out this last time before he left, it came out that he had been addicted to pornography since he was a kid. So I think that, he was just satisfying himself other ways and through other women.
Okay.
I know of the 3 affairs. I don't know if there were any others. The
Right.
3 that he left me for.
At the very least, he used it to keep you on unstable ground.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I will say, before I discovered covert narcissism, I said to my counselor, this was shortly after the last time he left me, I said, I don't understand. I have all these cards that he's given me over the years that I've held on to that say things like, I love you. You're my best friend. You're the rock of the family. I don't ever want to live without you. I can't wait to grow old with you. And I said to her, but all the while, he's been having affairs. Would you consider that mental abuse? And she says, yes. And I was like, oh,
Yeah. Sometimes it's amazing how hard it is for us to identify that it's actually abusive behavior.
Yeah. And I had medical issues over the years that I believe were directly a result of all of the internal stress that I dealt with that I didn't realize I was dealing with.
Sure. That's not unusual at all. For the buildup of all the adrenaline overload, I talk about this a lot in my groups, the adrenaline overload, the cortisol overload, that it builds up and builds up and builds up, the hypervigilance, the always, on guard, on alert, walking on eggshells, all of that, it builds up an environment inside of you that is conducive for medical issues.
Yeah.
Like it just sets the right stage for medical issues.
Right. And I'll just mention 1 week after he had left, my son came to me and said, Mom, I feel so much peace since Dad's been gone.
Wow.
And I said, me too.
Wow.
Neither of us realized until then all of the stress and discomfort that we lived with on a daily basis.
Yeah. You get used to it. You adjust to it.
Yeah.
And then when it's gone is when you realize it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how are things now? Let me ask that with you and for your son.
Uh-huh. Well, so I homeschooled my son for 13 years. So it was 5 months after he graduated from high school that my husband told me he was having another affair and wanted to leave. It was our son's first year of college, and he was doing online school. And I said, well, you're going to have to wait till school's over because this is not about you. This is about our son and him getting through his first year of college successfully. That was in October of his freshman year. And in January is when my husband left. And I had always said that when my son graduated, I wanted to take a year off and just kind of get my life together again after all those years of homeschooling before I went back into the workforce. So I did that and I stayed home. And then in, let's see, it was, because this is 2024. So it was actually September, it was the day after Labor Day of 2022. When I started a new job and I was working part-time Monday through Friday, 9 to 1. And it was the best experience for me. Wow. Because I work for 3 men who are financial planners. I'm their office manager. And for the first time in years, I felt valued and appreciated. And it was so healing for me.
Wow.
And I loved going to work every day. And they've just been so good to me. And it did a lot for my self-esteem to realize that these men felt that I had value and that I had something to contribute, and they respected my input and would let me know that they appreciated me, would let me know that I did a good job. And things that I didn't realize I hadn't been hearing. So that's been a great experience. I will say the hardest part about now I am divorced. Our divorce judgment was signed April 8th of this year. But it was the rebuilding of networks because I hadn't been working outside the home for a long time. And a lot of the friends that I had were through my husband and his employment. And so I lost, and his family, I lost probably 75% of my network when he left. Because my mom lives in the area and I have some cousins and that's it. I have a sister who lives out of the area. All of my nieces and nephews live out of the area. So it's been hard work, but fun, rebuilding friendships, getting reconnected with people I used to know or meeting new people. I started stopping at our local grocery store mornings, couple mornings a week to grab a cup of coffee on my way to work. And I ended up becoming really good friends with the barista there. And we get together almost every single day for coffee in the morning. And it's just been, I've been having a lot of fun.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. And I love that you're sharing some of the story about how you're rebuilding your network. You kind of did it in two different ways. One is you mentioned reconnecting with old friends, and the other is then building new friends. And I love that. So reconnecting with old friends, did you reach out to people that maybe you hadn't talked to in a long time that had been your friends, before the marriage or at least outside of the marriage?
Yes, I did that. And, people I used to work with that I just lost touch with. And honestly, it was your Covert Narcissist group where I had to create a Facebook account. I've always been like, no, I'm never going to do Facebook. And then, that was the way of connecting. And so I created a Facebook account and right away somebody friended me. I'm like, I'm not going to be posting anything. I'm not going to accept any And then more people started friending me. So I started accepting friend requests. And then my father passed away this year. And when he passed away, I decided to post some pictures of him and, a tribute to him. And, then I just was into it full time. So, I just got to reconnect with friends from high school and it's been great. I've enjoyed it. And
good. I think it can be a wonderful tool in that way. Now, it can also have a lot of negative, and you just kind of have to set your boundaries with that.
Absolutely.
But it can really be a good tool for reconnecting with people of your past.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it has, good. It's been good.
Good. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your father.
Thank you.
And with new friendships, did you, you mentioned getting coffee in the morning. So what other avenues did you find to go ahead and start trying to find some new friendships?
Well, so that was one, I know a lot of people at this grocery store and
that was a big one.
I just know. Yeah, that was a big one. It's kind of funny. It's like home away from home. It's ridiculous, but
that's awesome.
But in my neighborhood, just getting out and just building the relationships. We've lived in this house for 7 years. It was a house my husband had to have. But I'm the one who has it now. Good. And, just continuing to build the friendships with other people in the neighborhood. Church is a big part of my life, but I have become a little more involved in volunteering for different things. And we have every 6 months at our church, there's a ladies' game night. And that's been a great thing. I've learned to play Uno No Mercy.
I don't know that one. I'll have to look into that one.
That's a good one, yeah. And that's been fun because I've gotten to know people there that I just kind of see in passing at church, but so I've started going out and having coffee with a couple of different ladies that I've gotten to know through the game night.
Great.
Yeah, I'm so glad to coffee.
Yeah. I'm so glad. And your son is doing well?
He is. Yes.
Good.
He is. He pushed his way through school that year because he had his whole second semester to get through after, his dad left. And he finished top of his class. He just kind of put his head to the grind and got it done. And then it all started to hit him. And then he started to process what had taken place. He started recognizing things that he had been dealing with that he didn't even realize.
Okay.
My husband had started to see a counselor and asked the counselor to reach out to our son to see if he'd be willing to come in and speak to the counselor, because my son chose not to have contact with his dad, which he did on a couple of occasions. And then finally in January of 23, my son started seeing this counselor on a regular basis.
Okay.
And it's been a great relationship. And he did not go back to school in the fall of 23 or 22, excuse me. He has now decided that this come January, he would like to go back to school full time and pursue becoming a professional counselor.
Awesome.
And his counselor has said, Dylan, I have thought all along that you would be excellent at this. I'm so excited. So he's had a few people affirm that in his life, that he would be great at that. He works with the kids in our youth group at our church. He's the small group leader for the 7th and 8th grade boys right now. Our youth group has about 90 kids in it. So he's got a big group of young guys that he mentors, and he's really good at it. He loves it. And even other young men in the youth group who are older, he has a great mentoring relationship with these guys. And I am so grateful that this has not destroyed him.
Right.
It's made him stronger.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. And I mean, our kids have to process this stuff. They have to go through it in their own way and work through it. So good for him for doing that, and for you for being able to be there for him while he worked his way through that. So, and if he can go forward and pursue this path as a professional counselor and do it with the knowledge that he has now from his own life experience, that will be incredibly valuable to our world.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess I want to wrap this up and say, so there is life after narcissism?
Oh yeah, there is. Can I just say though, one thing that I have seen in the people I've come in contact with who have been in a similar situation that I have is, unfortunately, I feel like people they feel like they've had enough counseling and they haven't really healed all the way. I've met a lot of people who I feel like they haven't quite healed. And my encouragement would be to just keep pressing in, keep moving forward in your healing process, because I've been going to counseling on and off for the past 25 years, but it's been good for me. And it is a process. It's, you heal a little bit at a time, and then you go out and you live what you've learned, and you go back and you learn a little bit more. And I said to my counselor the very first time I ever saw her 25-ish years ago, I know I'm going to have scars. I just don't want to be a cripple. And recently I brought that up to her, and she said, you've made it. You've made it.
Wow.
And so,
that warms my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because I've been recently asking in the Facebook group, what does healing look like? Like, what does healing look like? We don't reach a point where we go, I'm healed. Ta-da, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's going to be a journey of a lifetime. Yeah. And just like if you have a broken leg, you might, you're going to go through PT, you're going to get that leg strong again. You're going to, be functioning and doing all the things you do, but you're going to, you still might, when the weather turns cold, you might have some achiness in that leg. Yeah. When you do a big workout, that leg might be a little tender. You're going to have some memories and some remnants that are going to remind you of what you've been through.
Yeah. And I told my counselor, I said, Diane, you cannot retire until I have at least one dating relationship, because I am not going to know how to navigate this without you.
Awesome. So has that day happened?
No,
No.
No, not yet. But I look forward to, I do desire, not everybody does, and that's okay, but I desire to have a healthy, mature relationship again someday.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what that looks like. And I'd like to know.
Well, I'll be cheering for you from the sidelines. So
thank you.
All right, Wendy, thank you so much for sharing your story here. I think it very much so warms the audience or encourages the audience of just knowing that there are better days ahead, and while it can be awfully gloomy and negative while you're in the throes of it, that brighter days do exist.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Wendy, so much for sharing your story. Just a pleasure and so good to see you again. So
it's great to see you.
So,
yes.
Everyone out there, I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. If you are struggling with covert narcissism in your life, I help people to heal from covert narcissistic abuse. If you are struggling with the isolation, the self-doubt, and the obsessive thinking, then this is the program for you. I offer both group and individual options. This is live, personalized coaching that is specific to covert narcissism. Reach out to me anytime. You can find me at my website, covertnarcissism.com. I'm not a therapist and you are not a victim. I am a coach and you are a survivor. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.